Hello, welcome to Park with Visionaries. I am Ruchita Rani, the Network Development and Strategic Alliance Head at Park. On behalf of Park, Mumbai Tarun Bharat, and Sanskriti Samvardhan and Samshodhan Pratishthan, I welcome you all to this wonderful session with Mr. Shail Vyas.
Thank you.
I am happy to welcome Mr. Shail Vyas to this platform, and you'll be happy to know that Mr. Shail Vyas is a wonderful combination of an engineer, a technocrat, as well as a musician. So, what is it lying for us today? An area that has intrigued everyone for years and continues to do so is to do with the Harappan civilization, the Indus Valley civilization, the Sindhu Samskriti. So, what about it? Yes, everything intrigues. But what would you think if I were to tell you that much of the music that we see today has its origin in the Harappan music?
Yes.
And that is what we have today with Mr. Shail Vyas going to be discussing with us. For many of us who have interacted with Mr. Shail Vyas would be happy to know that he is a child prodigy when it comes to music. He is a trained artist from the Jaipur Gharana. Apart from that, he has trained immensely in the area of Western music from the Trinity College, London. Well, this doesn't end here. You may have seen several of his scores, compositions, when it comes to advertisements, to various music pieces, background scores, when in the plays, in movies, as well as in theatre. So, on this note, where we have a very technically qualified gentleman when it comes to music and engineering, let's hear it from him what he has to say on Harappan music. So, the first few minutes are all yours. Before any question put up, what is it that you would want to tell our audience about Harappan music?
Yeah, the idea of Harappan music was kind of non-existent. In the books, in research papers, all we had was just a passing reference, which did not tell us anything about music. Apart from that, they must have some music. But for a civilization like Indus Valley, now we must look at the first of all the size and the antiquity of this civilization. So the Harappan civilization was spread in a large area. It covered from area from Afghanistan, goes well into Uttar Pradesh, Alamgirpur, and Sanauli recently, the late Harappan site. In north up to Jammu, in Punjab, in Sindh, in Rajasthan, in Gujarat, and even in northern parts of Maharashtra, there are Harappan sites of various periods. So, and it was an urban civilization as we know it, and it was the largest civilization of its time. I mean, it was about double the size of either of Mesopotamia or Egypt, the contemporary civilizations. So, for such a large civilization, it is very much obvious that there would be music and there would be some intricate musical traditions going on, especially for a civilization which is urban. And people, Harappan trade is very well understood that they were seafaring traders. They send goods to all around the world of that time, the old world that we call now, to the Central Asia, to Mesopotamia, to Persian Gulf, even probably to Egypt. So, for such a large civilization, and the knowledge about music is zero.
Yes.
That was the situation when I started this project to research on musical instruments and musical tradition in Harappan times, as well as compare it to the later period and the work on the later time, because situation is exactly same for later period also. That we say that our music is thousands of years old, but we don't know what happened in those thousands of years.
Right.
So that was a very sad situation in a way, and that intrigued me a lot. And my first idea was to figure out whether it is doable. Is there enough evidence to find it? And which probably people researching on it may not be musicians themselves.
Right.
And that makes it difficult particularly because of the reason that musical instruments are mostly made of perishable material. They don't survive.
Right.
And what you are going to find are the parts of the instrument which are by chance non-perishable.
Correct.
And the biggest trouble of Harappan archaeology is the lack of evidence. Not just about music, but many things about life. For example, the script. The examples of script in Harappan civilization are found mostly only on the seals,
Right.
where each inscription is like 4 to 5 signs. That's it. So even if it is deciphered one day, it won't give any information about the civilization itself forthrightly.
Right.
It may tell us about the language, and then through that language we indirectly we will understand that. But forthrightly or directly, it will not tell us anything. And forget about music. That's not you need a book about that.
Correct.
You need a book written about music. Second, very important issue is the standardized nature of the seals. There are thousands of seals which are found. The problem is they are all made in a standard way. The motifs on those seals are mostly of an animal or maybe multiple animals. It could be the real animal. It could be an imaginary animal, maybe a composite. What I like to call, and most scholars also call them, where the parts of multiple animals are joined together to create a fantastic beast kind of a thing. Now that, and then there is a string of Harappan script. That's the standard nature of the seal. It doesn't show anything about life. It doesn't show anything about the art or the culture. They themselves are, of course, pieces of arts.
Yes.
But the narrative is not present on the seals, like we see in Mesopotamia and Egypt. The third issue, which is equally troubling, is the lack of central palaces or the elaborate burials that we see in Egypt and in Mesopotamia, where one would hope to seek better evidence. Because most of the knowledge we have about Egypt and Mesopotamia is from their elaborate burial traditions that they had. But for some reason, Harappans did not believe in that. So that help is also not there. Neither there are some central palaces or temples. Maybe they were there and we are yet to identify them. That is also a possibility. But at this point, we don't know. So there are so many issues lying in the Harappan archaeology itself, creating this hurdle of music. There are some fortunate inscriptions. For example, there are some signs in the Harappan scripts that are derived from musical instruments. So, for example, an arched harp is there, or there is a clapper, and there is damru, the shape of damru. Now, those signs are also very small. They are ligatured. They are not the direct diagrams of the instrument, but they are meant for some other purpose. But those shapes are probably inspired from musical instruments, and which is quite likely it can happen. And there are other shapes which are also derived from other things of life. So in the script, so these were the problems which I encountered, and but still we managed to find evidence.
As a research fellow, as a Homi Bhabha research fellow, while you were researching into all of this, and you have also been able to revive about 40 different musical instruments.
Yeah, 20 from Harappan period. There are total 40 instruments that are identified in this research, out of which 20 belong to Harappan civilization. Maybe even more than 20 are there now. And other instruments are from the later period. And some of the Harappan instruments, which we have already recreated, early prototypes of them. And it is an ongoing process. It has to be refined, and now with each passing year, we get more, we collect more knowledge, more information about them, and we have to refine them again and again to reach to a proper approximation of the original instrument. But we are very close. That is there.
So when it comes to an instrument which you have worked on, which is the Kumbha Tarangini, or when it comes to the the harp that you developed on the bull,
Yes,
the bull
yes.
harp.
Mm.
So, how is it that from these seals, or
Mhm.
like you said, that they were quite nondescript as
Yes,
such?
yes.
So then, what was the process like for being able to reach this particular
Yes, yes.
instrument?
See, each instrument took a different route to reach to that. For example, for stringed instruments of lute kind, a lute is an instrument like a guitar,
Yes.
or like a, maybe even sitar. Or so for that we found multiple varieties of tuning pegs in Harappan archaeological excavations in the records. That and there was a variety of them made from different material, different shapes, and different designs on them. Some of them were very decorated, made from ivory and made from terracotta and bone. And I'm quite sure there must be wooden pegs also used at that time, but that did not survive, obviously. But and apart from that, so that's how we came to know about the lutes. That was the first indication that existence of many lutes, because they were all different shapes and different sizes, so most likely coming from different kind of lutes. And for the use of pottery in the instrument, the kum tarangini, which I like to call that instrument. Now there must be variety of such instrument. Use of pots is prevalent till today in India in all parts, and we can see the terracotta pots used in classical music and in folk music and in popular music, everywhere in film music. There are metallic pots used everywhere. Then the rhythm instruments which we play today, they are mostly all derived. They have all roots in that only. The tabla which we see, they are also two pots, essentially the pots covered with the leather. So are the mridangam or the pakhavaj, which are again a different shaped vessels, differently shaped vessels, or maybe tasha. You saw that. So that pottery systems have helped a lot in development of many musical instruments. So that's from where that Kumbha Tarangini came from. And we have historically we have seen use of multi-faced pots for to be used as musical instrument. For example, Panchamukha Vadyam or the Saptamukha Vadyam, which both are which were used till recently, maybe used, still used in some places, but very rare. And now the situation is very bad. So that is there. Apart from that, the bull-shaped instrument you talked about. Now that's a lyre. Lyres and harps are very similar instruments, and today we differentiate them in a way that the harp has the strings which used in harp. They attach to the body of the instrument directly on the both ends, using small bridges. But lyres, on the other hand, they on one side of the string, they travel over the body of the instrument using a bridge. So there is a common bridge over which all the strings of that instrument, you can have many, you can have 5 strings or 10 string or 12 string, whatever you wish, but they will travel over at least some part of the travel of the strings will be over the body of the instrument itself using one common bridge. And on the other part, they would be connected to a yoke with some tuning pegs of any kind that you can decide on. So this particular one is a lyre because it uses the shape of the bull as the resonator of the instrument, the body of the bull, and there is a bridge, common bridge. So we classify it today as lyre. But it is not necessary that ancients did that so. That they considered the harps type instruments and lyre type instrument differently. We don't know.
Right.
And we should not appropriate our ideas to them. So we don't know whether they maybe for example, veena has been a very common word for all string instruments. So they may have used either same or similar words for identifying all the stringed instruments, or maybe they may have some other ideas of their own. But we now do. But as you asked, that from where the evidence for that instrument came, that came from Mesopotamia, not from Harappan sites. Because as I was discussing recently, just before you asked that, the problem of the evidence in Harappan archaeology. So that that scarcity of evidence prompted for new ideas to look for the evidence in other directions. And from there came the idea of finding for musical evidence in other contemporary civilization with which Harappan traded. And the Mesopotamia is the most important one among them, because with Mesopotamia they had great trade contacts, and which is very much established right now. There is ample evidence to that. And Harappan ships took along with them like exotic animals, maybe humped bull, peacock and elephant, and maybe dogs and cocks, maybe cat. There is a cat mentioned from Maluha, which is the possible name of Harappan civilization in Mesopotamian records, or maybe a part of it, not necessarily the entire Harappan civilization they call Meluha. It is that clarity is not there yet, but it could be a part of it, or maybe entirety. Apart from that, they took species of woods, because Mesopotamia is a place which is deficient in woods, where present day Iraq and that area. So a lot of woods were going, wooden furniture, royal furnitures, semi-precious stones, lapis lazuli, agate, carnelian, ivory and ivory articles. Obviously, elephant is not native to Mesopotamia. So most of the ivory items found there are considered to be foreign imports, obviously, and mostly from India. So when this kind of trade happens, see, what happens is that trade colonies are needed to be established for such long distance trade over land or maybe maritime. It doesn't matter, but there has to be a supply chain. There has to be and the artisans. There is a lot of evidence for that Harappans had established trade colonies in Mesopotamia and surrounding area, even in Kish and Elam, and in Mesopotamia in Ur. There is even literary record of a Harappan village in Mesopotamia, Maluhan village in Mesopotamia, near the old city-state of Lagash, where that village is mentioned. Harappans are mentioned in Mesopotamian records doing variety of things. They are in charge of scribes. Sometimes they are mentioned as temple overseers, sometimes functionaries in temples, sometimes suppliers of variety of things to the temple. They even probably helped in establishing and managing temples there. So all that was there. So when population moves from one place to another, their culture go with them. Their culture, their language, all those things would automatically go with them. And some scholars even suggested that they established marriage connections with to solidify the trade contacts. So they married local people there. All that again would help culture to propagate. So due to all these reasons, it was quite necessary to check for evidence in Mesopotamia, and that's when I first of all looked in archaeological evidence to look for similarities because in Mesopotamia there is a lot of preserved material found. Their script is deciphered. A lot of textual evidence is there. Lexical evidence is there. Then even due to all these symmetries, like royal symmetry of Ur and all the Ur or Ur, what it is pronounced. So that is there. So there is a lot of iconography available, and even there are musical instruments which are found. Right. Which were, for example, in the royal cemetery itself, some 9 lyres were found. So, looking at all those iconographic evidence, it was getting quite evident that it is likely that Indian musical instruments reached there, because there were a lot of parallels were found in the musical tradition. For example, the tradition of anthropomorphic musicians. Now, in Indian literature, and text, even since from earliest one, that is the Rig Veda. Anthropomorphic musicians are present.
Yes.
Kim Purusha in Rig
Yes.
Veda, then we have Kinnaras.
Kinnaras.
Then we have, apart from that, there are many other classes of not only musicians, but like there are gods, anthropomorphic gods. Hanuman is there. Hanuman, if one can say it is later period, but then Vrishakapi is there in Rig Veda, which is very similar concept like Hanuman. Then there are gods like Ganesh, and then other mythological characters like Garud and Nagas. And, yes. So, and this is not new thing to this subcontinent. In South Asia, even from probably well before Harappan period, the urban Harappan period, the imagery of anthropomorphic beings have been there since even late probably 10,000 years from now, 12,000 years from now. Such imagery have been found in variety of evidence. Two scholars, and they have mentioned about that. Similar was found in some of the Mesopotamian seals and the narrative tablets and all, where the anthropomorphic musicians were shown. On top of that, there are instruments shown which are zoomorphic, shaped like animal. Now, that animal-shaped instrument is again a very long-standing tradition in India. If you see the Rudravina, for example, it is like a snake. If you see
even the yard,
yes, yeah, all the yals, all of them are zoomorphic instruments. Then and there are variations to that. Even sometimes instrument itself is not shaped like an animal, but then there is animal painting or some kind of iconography on that which shows some bird or animal. Similarly, these musicians, Kinnaras, they are considered like half animal, half human, sometimes half bird, half human. And so both of those imageries were found in Mesopotamia. And that led to the new idea that if it's really true that these traditions reached here with Indian artisans and artists in Mesopotamia, then
what about the wood that is used? I mean, I guess that there are even some trees and all that are not native to Mesopotamia. But
yes, I'll come to that. Yes, I'll come to that in a moment. So from there, the idea came that if they really reached there, what happens is musical instruments have another quality. When they travel to other places, their names go with them. They, for example, harmonium is very popular instrument today in India. It is played in folk music, classical music, but it is not of Indian origin, native to India, and in fact it came very recently, not far from now. So harmonium, but we call it harmonium. The name is same. Even folk music, classical music, they call it harmonium. We don't. Yes. Or violin, for example, we call violin only. So this happens with all because it's a technical term. So technical terms are usually accepted by people as it is.
Right.
That because
so you don't go and change the name.
Yes. So if Harappan music and musical instruments really reached Mesopotamia, then it was also possible that probably their names or concepts related to them are also recorded in literature or in lexical records. So then this linguistic angle came into the research, and a very detailed comparative study was done in Sumerian language, which was spoken in larger part of Mesopotamia when the relation between Harappans and Mesopotamians started and flourished. In later period, Akkadian became popular in Mesopotamia. But even then Sumerian was spoken. It was not that Sumerian was not spoken. So Sumerian was chosen to be compared first, and later on the Akkadian with names of instruments in ancient Indian literature in Indo-Aryan language family as well as in the Dravidian family of languages. And when this study was done, then about 30 music terms related to music in Mesopotamia in Sumerian records were found very similar to the terms in ancient Sanskrit literatures. Like out of which about 20 are names of musical instruments. Then there are names of singers and musicians, and some designations of songs, and musical notations, etc. Now, and they also supported the iconography, which was what iconography was showing us. For example, these anthropomorphic musicians. So the Kinnara, the word Kinnar is found recorded in Mesopotamia and in surrounding area in its clipped form, like the Kinnar. So they made it Nar, in the clipped form of it. But it is also present as full word in name of instruments as well as in the names of designations of musicians, as lyre players and harp players, and not only in Sumerian but in Akkadian, in Egyptian, in Hittite, in even as late as Hebrew. So, so that support, the textual support came to the archaeology. But then again, the results were in a way overwhelming, because about 60 terms which were studied from Sumerian records, 30 were found to be similar to Sanskrit. Now that becomes another problem, because it looks all good and fine, but also appears too good to be true. That because this shows a very significant cultural impact, and such a result should be verified again. It is very much necessary, because what if these terms came from somewhere else in Sumerian literature? So if these findings were correct, and these musical instruments came from South Asia in Harappan period, because they are all attested in the same period, which is the urban Harappan period. From in Mesopotamia, we call it the early dynastic period, around 2600 or so BCE, till through Akkadian period and till Old Babylonian period. Old Babylonian is around roughly till around 1800 BC or something like that, which is exactly the time of Harappan trade with Mesopotamia and the urban phase of Harappan civilization. So if these findings are correct, but then all the trade related items which we find in Mesopotamia, which are also technical terms, many of them are actually, if you look at it, like name of the tree, or the name of jewelry articles, or the units of measurements which are found in Mesopotamian archaeology, the weight measures and all that. And it is obvious, to do trade and to units would be needed, and to even for the craft work, which Harappan craftsmen were living in Mesopotamia and creating articles with the local fashion there, in their local market, for their local market. So obviously they would need units of measurement. So then all these technical terms should also have similarities, at least some similarity in some cases with Sanskrit, with the same language. And with one thing which I did not mention is the patterns of transformation, which were continuously observed in all the musical terminologies. That there were some continuous and repeating patterns through which the words were transformed into Sumerian language, quite similar to something called phono-semantic matching. I'll not go into detail, that will become too technical, but and too long also. So then there should be more terms in Sumerian literature pertaining to all these species of woods and all the units and all that, which come from the same underlying language as these musical terms, that is Old Indo-Aryan, and should be following the same patterns of transformation. Then we can maybe say that more certainly. So then another detailed study was conducted, and that took really a lot of efforts to go into that. But some 4 or 5 species of trees were found, which were very important, which are very important in many ways, not only just from the point of view of this. For example, one tree called Delbergia ujinensis. Meshi, the name is Meshi in Sanskrit, and Mes in Sumerian. And that tree found to be very, very important in ancient period in India, and now it is in very dangerous condition.
Mm.
The tree is, most of people even don't know about the tree.
Mm.
It is that bad. And it is about, I mean, it is endangered, and not
Endangered.
completely endangered, but it is going towards that way. Apart from that, the units of measurement were found for the weight measures, for distance, length and distance, as well as for capacity, all that. Jewelry articles, and the beads. Beads were the most significant Harappan export, and jewelry made from beads. So, terminologies related to all these jewelry articles are found. Furnitures, wooden furnitures are found, and tools of carpentry, and so on. So, about some, including 30 musical terms, 60 more terms are found. Total 90 such terms are found till now, and I'm quite sure that more will be found. This is a continuous work, and we already have preliminary data that there will be more to know, and that will help not only understanding the Harappan trade, but the civilization itself, their relationship with Mesopotamia, their socio-political involvement in the region. So let's hope for the best, what comes out of it.
Bringing us back to the musical instrument part, what is it like? I'm sure I know that you have already done some kind of events and programs like an orchestra, trying to bring back that kind of a feel which may have been during that period of time. So would you like to say something about what is it that, of course, that there have been, the concept of an orchestra has been far earlier than a solo kind of a performance, whether it is dance or whether it is music. Always it has been a larger group that performs. So would you like to say something about the presentation during that time?
Yes, see, it is as we all these there's so many musical names of instrument found in Mesopotamian literature, that shows that probably a lot of instruments existed, and that is obvious and understandable, because you have such a large civilization which is developed and urban, and they have a lot of good craftsmen. You know, that's what you need to make instruments. So all that was present, and similar is seen in the evidence that probably there were a lot of many types of instruments were present. And I'm a musician to begin with, and to me it doesn't make much of sense to see a picture of the instrument. That doesn't interest. Would not interest me. I would like to hear the sound and make music with it, or probably try and find what kind of music can be made using that. So this was clear from the very beginning that this research will not be about just knowing about the instruments, but recreating the instrument. That was significant part of it, and that has always been the part of the process. And as you already mentioned, that there are some 10 to 12 types of instruments that we have recreated from Harappan period. But intention is to make all of them and continuously improve on the previous prototypes. And I'm quite hopeful that soon we will be reaching to that goal. But making the instrument, they have to be used in some kind of musical performances, and that's what the ultimate goal is. That the revival of the instruments themselves. That we not only create them, but we create music with them, put them in conjunction with other musicians, with other instruments which we now have, and because that is the only way that instrument will survive. Otherwise, it will again be lost one more time, which will make no sense. And all this hard work will be it will be wasted. So this is the path which I'm going towards right now, and I hope soon we'll be reaching there.
Yes, indeed. So, Shailji, apparently, I'm sure you're the only recipient or the only musicologist who is the recipient of this Homi Bhabha Scholarship Fellowship, right? Which means this is truly inspirational for
Thank you.
for all, and especially for the new generation.
Yeah.
But considering the exposure that the youth currently have to a whole lot of things,
Mhm.
how do you look at being able to take this commendable work to them and have them maybe integrate into this kind of learning?
Yeah, the music has another quality to capture attention of people, and that is the first our first idea, to make this music reach to people in the way of performances, probably through popular media, through television, through variety of other platforms. That is something I've been working on since quite some time, and now since the theoretical part of the work is quite covered, so this is definitely the next step, to make this music reach to people. Once people get hooked to music, then it will be easier for us to get them more deeply into this, and into the deeper understanding of the civilization, the culture. And for this research, music has led us to so many places, and I'm sure it will do the same for the youth as well.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And I think this will be very important because when we look at it in terms of the soft power of
Mhm.
India,
Mhm.
like music, of course, all the arts and the cultural aspect does play an important role. But to be able to effectively use this, and especially now with you being able to recreate and
Yeah.
revive the
Mhm.
instruments, this becomes a very important, could become an important aspect of being able to put forth or present forth and utilize the soft power of
Mhm.
as
Yes,
the soft power
yes,
of India.
yes.
So how do you think? Of course, you did say that integrating it with other instruments and all, but to establish it or to use it more effectively.
Yeah. See, the when I said integrating, that doesn't mean that integrating all the time.
Correct.
That is the like one way of doing it. Then, of course, first of all, we have to figure out the originality of it, and that's what and integrating doesn't means losing the originality.
Exactly.
That means adding more, not removing anything.
That's right.
But as far as this the idea of soft power is concerned, it is in Harappan period. I can tell you with great confidence that they used it effectively, because that's what evidence suggests.
Exactly.
The kind of impact in musical areas and musical spheres and performance spheres in Mesopotamia, which is found that so many musical instruments, then the classes of musicians which are found, like not only kinnaras but also the jesters and the vidushaka and bhand, the different classes
Yes.
of musicians.
Yes.
They are all mentioned in Mesopotamian literature. That means the Harappan traders probably had this practice of keeping musicians with them,
Correct.
which we have seen in the later historical period also. And for such long distance trade, it is likely that traders would keep some means of entertainment with them, but probably they also use them in performances there for their clients and friends and customers there, which probably may have helped in popularizing the culture, and that in turn may have helped in increasing the trade.
Exactly.
And that again, so
Yes.
that
So it's a,
so yes,
it's
yes,
a
yes.
cyclic
So
process
yes. Probably a chain reaction may have triggered,
Right.
because otherwise this kind of impact is difficult. To get this kind of impact, probably this happened for over a period of time, and maybe the early Harappan traders who may have reached Mesopotamia in early centuries of third millennia BC, maybe even before that, because of the shell and shell trade for which Mesopotamians used for their making their seals.
Seals.
So that started quite early. So that is, in fact, a lot of work is yet to be done. But what is apparent right now is this, that probably the cultural elements themselves became the active contributor to the trade. As we see in jewelry.
Right.
So that is also art, craft, which became the trade.
Right.
Similar is seen in music. Probably Harappan artisans were also making and selling musical instruments there, and they were probably doing it in Mesopotamian styles there, because that's what many instruments which are found from Royal Cemetery. So they look. They have Indian elements of Indian tradition in it, but they also have elements of Mesopotamian tradition in it. So it looks like an amalgamation of both the. And that's what archaeology has showed, that occultation of people, artisans, and who produced for Mesopotamian market using designs which were popular there or of their style. But yet that they had the technologies.
So the synthesis of
Yes.
art and
Yes.
culture has been there.
So this is a very great lesson to learn from this work, that how effectively they used the music and arts and crafts of their land to promote and create new trade avenues. And throughout this process, I have been wondering about that how effectively they did it, because there is so much evidence about Harappan presence in Mesopotamia. Not a single object of clear Mesopotamian origin is found at any Harappan site till today. So of course they must have been getting something in return. Must probably perishable material, probably edibles, probably precious metals, in which they used in some other form. But any significant impact of Mesopotamian origin is not present in Harappan archaeological evidence, at least. So they kind of the trade was in a way skewed in the favor of Harappans.
Right.
So and yet probably it was all peaceful and in the way of occultation, in the way of mixing with the people. Maybe even they built temples for them.
So now just coming towards the close, but something which is very important and required is to be able to integrate the work that you have done, because like you said, like we started on this note that there is hardly much of it spoken of in our, let us say, in our school books and all. Just leave it to maybe just a line or a paragraph or two. How do you see this knowledge or these findings, these new findings, getting integrated or becoming a part of the narrative now? Because this is very important as we move on, because you have done this work, but it has to translate into something which will remain for a longer period of time and move on to generations, because it's not a normal find. It's not that everyone comes up with this kind of an idea and is able to actually in the sense that you have worked with archaeologists, you have worked with a whole lot of different types of groups of people to be able to have come to this level of findings in your research. And this is something which is extremely significant and needs to be taken down in that much of, with that much sincerity and that much respect and regard to this kind of learning, this kind of research. So how is it that you look at it being integrated further, or
yes,
what
there are
support system you think is required to be able to take it?
Yes. See, the support system is definitely required for this to not only to complete the further stages, because the work is still in the progress, and also my papers are in the process of publication. Once that happens, the next stage would surely be this, to figure it out, that to collaborate with institutions or agencies like as yours, for example, and to come with the solutions for that matter. Till now, the attention and the first preference was to actually complete the research itself, because of the so much complicacy involved in it and the inherent multidisciplinary nature of the work. Musicology itself, in any ways, it is a multidisciplinary subject to begin with. But this particular research had like too many things going on in it. There was archaeology and there is anthropology in it, and then of course musicology. All other concepts of musicology was there. Then linguistics, a lot of linguistic issues. Many different languages were there. So a lot of complicacy I was handling during that period. But now the idea is to the idea is exactly the same what you mentioned. Yeah.
Okay. So, thank you, Mr. Shail Vyas,
Thank you.
for being with us, and I'm sure the audience will enjoy, because this is not something that they're going to be listening to very often,
Thank
and
you.
it will not just be enlightening but also inspiring.
Thank you.
So, thank you so much for being here. And with this, I thank all of you for being with us on Park for Visionaries, and I'm happy that Policy Advocacy Research Center, Mumbai Tarun Bharat, as well as Samskriti Samshodhan Pratishthan has been able to facilitate this dialogue, this interaction with Mr. Shail Vyas for his contributory work towards not just music but several other areas that are a part of his study. We wish him good luck in the journey, and we hope to be part of your journey
Thank you. Thank
as
you.
well. Thank you
Same
so
here,
much.
same here.
Thank
Thank you. Thank you.